In section 5.4.17, the question states that in a recent poll, a randomly sample of adults in some country 18 years and older who asked, when you see an ad emphasizing that a product is made in our country, are you more likely to buy it, less likely to buy it, or neither more nor less likely to buy it? And the results of the survey by age group are presented in the following contingency table. So again, here you can look here that you have the rows are the purchase likelihood, so you have more likely, less likely, neither more nor less likely. Then you have your columns. So you have 8 ages group from 18 to 34. More likely are 227, less likely 31. Neither more nor less 279. If you add those up, gives you 537. You can see that each age group gives you the following data, and then you have your total. So it's very important to closely take a look at the contingency table so that you're able to take that information and answer the following questions. So the first question states that what is the probability that a randomly selected individual is 45 to 54 years of age, given that the individual is less likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country? So again, we're using that formula where you have the probability of event F occurring, provided that E has already occurred. So if we look at the numerator of this probability, the probability states that individuals that are less likely to buy and are 45 to 54 years old. So if we take a look at the and part here. So again, it's saying that the individuals are less likely, and then we're looking at the age group of 45 to 54. And if you notice that when we create that kind of cross, it's telling us that the number that's in our numerator is going to be 31. So therefore, you can see that the individuals who are less likely to buy the product and are 45 to 54 years old is 31. So that's going to be in our numerator. Okay, and then we also need to determine what are the total individuals that are less likely to buy. So then we have to take into account that the total of that entire row is 86. And so if you take a look here at our definition, we have the fraction 31 over 86, and it gives us the probability of approximately 0.360. So therefore, the probability that a randomly selected individual is 45 to 54 years of age, given that the individual is less likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country, is approximately 0.360 or 36%. Okay, now we're going to again continue to keep using the same table. So for question B, it says, what is the probability that a randomly selected individual is less likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country, given that the individual is 45 to 54 years of age? So now, again, we're still using that same formula, but the numerator is telling us that we're looking for the individuals that are 45 to 54 years old and less likely to buy. So, taking a look at that scenario, we have the same situation as we had earlier. And so we're looking at the row of less likely. And then we're looking at the column of 45 to 54 of the age group. And you can see wherever we make that cross is going to represent the number that we're looking for. So again, our numerator is 31 individuals that are 45 to 54 years old and less likely to buy. So again, you can see in our formula that we have 31 in the numerator. Okay, and then the question is saying, given that the individual is 45 to 50 years of age. So you can see here, what are the individuals, or what are the total individuals of that entire column that is 45 to 54 years old? So if we take a look at that column, you can see that that total represents 616, and you can see that that's what's in our denominator. And so now when we do the actual division, we end up getting the result 0.050. So therefore, the probability that a randomly selected individual is less likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country, given that the individual is 45 to 54 years of age, is approximately 0.050. Now, in part C, the question is stating that are 35 to 44-year-olds more likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country than individuals in general? So for the first part, we want to be able to first find the probability that a randomly selected individual is more likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country, given that the individual is 35 to 44 years old. So if you notice, whenever it says given, you want to find the total that's in that particular column. That's what's going to be in the denominator. Okay, now in the numerator, we want to be able to find the number of 35 to 44-year-olds who are more likely to buy. So here, if we use our highlighter like we've done, so let me show you with the highlighter. Okay, so we're looking at the row which is more likely. And then we also know that the age group is 35 to 44 years old. So therefore, we're looking at that column, which is the second column. Okay, so where do they intersect when we create that cross? Well, we can see that the number that is more likely for the age group of 35 to 44 is 378. So that's in our numerator. Okay, now because it says given that the individual is 35 to 44 years old, well, the total for that column is what's going to be needed in the denominator. So when we add the total numbers of the age group of 35 to 44, then we get the result of 578. And so when we do that division, we're going to get 0.654. So the probability that a randomly selected individual is more likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country, given that the individual is 35 to 44 years old, rounded to 3 decimal places, is 0.654. Okay, so now the second part, because we are trying to compare then the individuals in general. So the individuals in general, that means the total amount that's been surveyed in this entire group. So we have to look at the total group, right? And so if we look at the total group, again, we're comparing the more likely to buy. So if we look at the row of more likely to buy, what is the total number that has been surveyed for more likely to buy out of all those age groups? Well, we can see that it is 1,430. So that is the total number that's going to be in our numerator. And so we're going to have to divide it by the total amount that's actually been surveyed. So the total amount that's been surveyed is at the bottom here of that column, which is 2,329, and therefore that's what's in the denominator. So when we divide those two numbers, then we get approximately 0.614. So then we can say that the probability that a randomly selected individual is more likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country in general, okay, to 3 decimal places is 0.614. So now what we're going to do is we're going to compare these two probabilities to answer our question. So comparing the probabilities of the two situations to answer the question, the probability for 35 to 44-year-olds to buy a product emphasized as made in our country is greater than for individuals in general. Because you can see here that 0.654 is greater than 0.614. So the individuals who are 35 to 44 years old are more likely to buy a product emphasized as made in our country than the individuals in general.